بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه. I intend to study and teach, to take and give reminders, benefit and assistance, and to inspire myself and others to hold fast to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to call to guidance and direct to goodness, seeking the countenance of Allah, His pleasure, nearness, and reward. Okay, so we said that today, inshallah, will be the last session. So I will start off with just going through the stopping signs. Inshallah, I actually took a picture of something that I found that might just be easier than me writing it on a board. I could find it, that is. These. Just make it easier for you. So you can see that these are basically the signs that you would find, and it is accessible via the internet quite easily. So as in terms of the first one, as we can see, there's a little meme. Okay, so this is not the same meme as the iqlab one. You'll notice that it'll just have a little bit more of a flick towards it, whereas the iqlab meme is a little bit more down, whereas this one is the stopping one, and it's a bit more with a little flick. Okay, so you'll just see it at the top sometimes or in the middle of an ayah, and that basically means that you have to stop. Okay, so as in terms of this is where you would stop, and then I'll explain as to how we stop once we've gone through these. Okay, so the first one is a necessary, it's a must stop, and then the next one is the la. Okay, a good way to remember that is la means no in Arabic, which means that you can't stop. This is a place where you should not stop. Now, if you find that an ayah, there's like a number in it, you know how you have a normal ayah, and then let's say there's a 2, then sometimes you'll find that there's a la at the top. That's fine. So as in terms of, obviously you're allowed to end at the end of the ayah, but if you see a la in the middle of an ayah or randomly, then you know that you should not be stopping. Okay, so you're not allowed to take a breath here. You would continue on and take a breath a little bit later on. Okay, then you have the jeem. A jeem means that it's up to you whether you want to stop or whether you don't want to stop. Okay, so the jeem is the same as the ta. So in some Qur'ans, you'll see the ta, which is basically the equivalent of the jeem. So it is up to you whether you choose to stop here or whether you choose not to. Generally, we say that if it's a long ayah, it's better for you to stop, because you'll find that if you're not stopping at the places where you are allowed to stop, then it's unlikely that you get until the end of the ayah within one breath. Okay, so this is a place where it's good for you to stop if you're able to, in the sense that if you struggle with your breath, like I'm someone that can't read a whole ayah in one breath, and that's just like as in terms of it's the way your lungs are, the way that you are yourself, also the breathing system, then the techniques and so forth. But even still, it's very difficult for me to get to the end of an ayah on a longer one. So I would choose to use these so that I am stopping in the correct places, and I'm making sure that I'm stopping correctly also. Okay, then you have this sign here, which is known as a sila. So it's called a sila, and that basically, as you can see, it means it's better to continue. So as in, even if you see it, then it's better for you to continue, but it doesn't matter if you do stop. It doesn't invalidate, or it doesn't spoil the meaning of the Quran, and that's essentially what these stops are trying to avoid, so that you can keep within the meaning of the Quran. Then you've got the qilla, which means that it's better to stop. So it's actually desirable. If you see it, then you stop here. Then you have these 3 dots. Now these 3 dots only really come in Surah Baqarah in the first ayah, where it says Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ. So I can either say it as Alif Lam Mim, and then it's ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Okay, and you'll see that there's dots on the fi bit in your Quran. So have a look at it afterwards. Just make a note for yourself that in Surah Baqarah you have those 3 dots just in the second ayah. So it's either a case where I would say it as Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, or I would say Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ. Get used to saying it in one way. So if you've got a Quran with you and you're able to open it up, then I would say do so, just so that you can understand what it is I'm referring to. Okay, so it starts with ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ. So if I choose to stop there, then I would have to do the qalqala, and I would say it as ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Or I would say it as ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Okay, so the idea is that you choose either one or the other. Okay, both would be correct. It just basically means that, as in terms of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a time where he stopped where saying ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ, and then فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, and then another time it would have been a case where it is ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That makes sense. And then you've got the next one, which is the scene. Okay, so this is known as a sector, and that little scene will tell you that you should make a slight pause. Okay, so you take a slight pause without breathing. Okay, so an example of this would be in Surah. You can write this down as a reference, maybe. I think, which one is it? What surah is it? Comes in a few. Does anyone know which surah it is? It's definitely in the last juz. Maybe in Naziat. Yeah. No, it's Mutafifin. Okay, so just write down as a reference for you that in Surah Mutafifin, ayah number 14. Okay, so it says Kalla bal, and then there's a scene there. So I would recite this as Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. So you don't take a breath. You basically just pause, and then you would continue on, and that's known as a sakta. It basically means a pause without taking a breath. So I don't say Kalla bal and then take a breath and then say rana ala qulubihim. I would say kalla bal, leave my tongue there in the place of articulation, and I say kalla bal, and then go straight onto the rana. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. So that's your the main the signs. If you have other signs in your Quran, then obviously it depends on your own Quran. Sometimes other Qurans will have different little signs, but generally those are the ones, with the exception of the ta, which you'd find in the Mughal text, and that's normally it's basically the equivalent of the jim. Okay, so remember, it's a chosen, whether you decide whether you would stop there or not, and then we go with the idea that, as in terms of you do try, and if you do stop, if you basically have a shortage of breath. Also, as in terms of like how you're meant to stop. Now, it's really important, because this is one of the things that most people struggle with, is that when you are stopping in the Quran, so whatever ayah it is, so let's just bring up a surah so it makes a bit more sense. Let's just bring this one up. Okay, so you, as you can see, as normal, when you just like you've been taught previously, at the end of an ayah, you would stretch it. Okay, so and a note for, because I didn't include it in the mud rules, that basically at the end of an ayah, you can either elongate it as 2, 4, or 6. So I can read this as amma yatasa'alun. That's just a normal 2. Or I can read it as amma yatasa'alun, and that's a 4. Or I can do it as a 6, amma yatasa'alun. Okay, so it's either 2, 4, or 6. Now, generally, when it comes to melody, or when you're practicing your Quran and so forth, or when you're trying to recite beautifully, 4 is a good number. Okay, to go with that as a recommendation. And so if you're reading fast, naturally, if you're reading a juz a day or whatever it is, you're not expected to do 4 at the end of each ayah. You can just do a normal 2. But when you're reading slowly, and when you're just focusing on one surah, 4 is a good number to go with. 6 would be a little bit too exaggerated when you're really doing qira'ah and you're reciting in front of many, and then you would choose to go as the 6. But as in 4 is a good number to have a nice recitation, and then 2 when you're just generally reciting. So that's the ruling: 2, 4, or 6 at the end of an ayah. Okay, we've already gone through mad muttasil and mad munfasil, and I was just going to say that about when you're stopping. So let's just go with something like this ayah. These are really short ayahs, so it's not really the best example for me. But basically, if I was going to read this ayah, I would read it as لا يذوقون فيها بردا. Okay, this is very hard for me to be able to give you an idea. I'm just going to get off this, and I'm going to go on to the surah that we were going to do anyway today, which is Surah Yasin. Okay, so if we just go to Surah Yasin, now you can see that some of these ayahs, let's go with this ayah. So it's ayah number 9, and you can see it's quite lengthy. So for me to recite that whole ayah, I would read it as Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And that's really difficult. So it's like, as in, I have to really struggle to get to the end. So for that reason, I would read this and I would find a place. Now, if there was a little jeem, then I would know that I would be stopping there. If I don't find any jeems, or I don't find any taws, or I don't find any of the recommended stops, then what I would do is that I would read this as وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا. And that's how I memorize this surah. So I know that I would choose to stop here. Now, the reason for why I chose to stop also to tell you is that when you see a fatatain, or it's only really with a fatatain, you would stretch it as a 2. So I would say this as sadda. And so these are, if I can see it anywhere else, whether the fatatain, so if I was going to stop here, I would say inna ja'alna fi a'naqihim aghlala. Okay, so you would, it's like as if you are taking one fatah off and you're stretching it as a 2. I think most of you should know that anyway. But as I was going to say, that if you don't have a normal system of where you would stop, because, as in terms of sometimes when you're reading the same surah, you just find that you stop in the same place. If you're just reading Surah Baqarah, for example, then you would read this as وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ. Okay, so then you feel that, okay, you know what, that's the only word that I can get to where I'm comfortable. Don't try and force yourself to try and get to the end of the ayah. You would stop here comfortably and then you would go back. Okay, so those of you that don't know the Arabic language, I normally say that I'll go back a few words. Okay, so as in, even if it's literally like 3 words, and so I would read this as وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُم. And then if I didn't know the meaning, I would say it as خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. Okay, so the idea is to just go with the concept of going 2 to 3 words beforehand so that you can keep with the meaning, because that's essentially what you're doing. Now, if I just stop here and say وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُم, no, وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُم, and I stop here and then I take a breath and then I just say فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ, it could change the meaning completely and it won't make sense. So that's why it's better for you to go back and you just read a few more words, even though you've already read those words, so that you can keep with the meaning and you make your recitation nice and clear and comfortable. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So the idea is that when you're stopping, you stop as normal at the end of an ayah, 2, 4, or 6. When you're stopping at a fatatain, you stretch it as a 2. And then if you are just generally stopping because you need to take a breath, then you would go back a few words. Okay, and while I say that, with this one, it was easy for me to do so because that meme had a sukoon on it. Now, if I, for example, was going to be reading, let's just say this ayah here, because it's half an ayah. So if I'm saying إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنِ, Okay, so even though there's a fatah here, because I'm going to take a breath now, I have to put a sukoon here. Now, this is so important because this is a very common mistake among students. So what they will do is that they will read this as إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ, and then they'll take a breath, and it won't even be like a long breath, but you are essentially taking some form of a breath. And for that reason, it's better for you to just find yourself that, oh, you're a little bit struggling. Before you even get to that struggle, you just stop, put a sukoon at the end of the word. Okay, so you would read this with a sukoon at the end, and then you, as following that same rule, that you would go back a few words, and then you would read it as wa khashiya rahmana. Okay, so we've learned in the Arabic sessions that the waw means and. So if you see a waw, then just start with the waw. If you see words that you recognize that you know in terms of its meaning, then you can start from there. So waw, you know, it means and so that's a nice way to start the next clause when you're reciting in terms of the meaning and so forth. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Is there any questions with regards to that? Please let me know. And then I needed to go through the difference between idgham and ikhfa for some people that it was not clear enough for. So to be honest, the only way that I can try and explain it a little bit more is that with regards to the idgham, okay, so we'll just use this surah up for you because it's you can see an idgham here. So you've got qawmam. So the idea behind the idgham is that it goes back to that literal meaning of putting one thing into another. Okay, so with idgham, you are essentially, you're pronouncing that letter in its full capacity. So that yanmu letter, you're actually pronouncing it in its full capacity. And so you're saying qawmam, or if it was a noon here, it'd be qawman. And so you pronounce that letter directly, you go straight to it, and then you release the gunna. Okay, so it's qawmam. I've gone straight to that meme, okay, because meme is a yanmu letter. And then I release the nasalization. With ikhfa, you're hiding that sound. So remember how I was explaining that it's like as if you're going slow motion into the next letter. So let's just find an example here. Saddan. Okay, so it's like as if it's not me saying saddaf and then I'm releasing the nasalization. It's impossible for me to do so. So see it as you are going slow motion with the ikhfa and you're going straight into the next letter with the idgham. It's just that with the idgham, there is the gunna, and that comes once you're at the letter. Whereas ikhfa is you're going slowly towards that letter, you're releasing the gunna, and then you pronounce that letter. And I hope that makes sense. Okay, so if there's still, as in you're still not sure, maybe try and Google it, because I can't really explain it in any other way, to be honest. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we are going to just use the last 10 minutes, inshallah, to go through this surah, these ayahs, and what I'm going to ask initially is for you to, let's do it in the sense that I give you the ayah and you're just finding as many rules as you can from it. Okay, you got it. Okay, so first of all, we go with the Yasin. Okay, so tell me, just quickly, I'm going to give you actually a couple of minutes. Let's give you 5 minutes. Just go through it and find as many rules as you can. So do it like as if ayah number 1, and then write however many rules that you can find in it. Ayah number 2, and try and get to as many ayahs as you can. But focus on more finding all of them. So essentially, you are looking for, while you're doing it, I'm just going to write down the possible things that you could find. So you've got heavy letters. You've got Noon Mushadda and Mim Mushadda. Heavy Ra. Name of Allah. Okay, you've got the Noon Sakin. Noon Sakin and Tanween. You've got Mim Sakin and Tanween. Not just Mim Sakin, sorry. And then you got the mads. And remember how we said there's Huruf al-Mad? مد متصل مد منفصل. Is it obligatory to stop at the gym? I already explained that the gym is it's up to you whether you choose to stop. So it wouldn't be obligatory. It's up to you. It's whether you want to stop. A question about the waqf. Okay, that means to pause, and that means, yeah, you literally just pause. When you see a little qaf, that means to pause. Yeah, there you go. And I need to just put the kalkala. Just gonna mute myself. Okay, I'm just giving it 1 more minute, inshallah, 1 more minute. Just find as many as you can. Okay, so let's have a look through then. Okay, so firstly, you're welcome to write it in the chat thing if you've got the answers and you want to write it quickly. I'm just going to go through it relatively quickly. Okay, so we've got Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Yasin. Okay, so the Ya is Haruf al-Mad, 2 harakat. The Seen is 6 harakas. Okay, because remember this is from Haruf al-Muqatta'a, and so you would stretch this. The Seen is spelled as a 3-letter word, and so it would be a 6. So the Ya would be 2 and then 6. Wal-Qur'an al-Hakim, the Qaf is heavy. The Ra is also heavy because of the Dhamma before it. The A is has an Alif Madda on it, so for that reason it'd be 2 harakas. Wal-Qur'an al-Hakim. Okay, so you have here a Haruf al-Mad, because it's end of ayah, is 2, 4, or 6. Okay, then you got Innaka laminal mursaleen. Innaka, the Noon mushaddada. And then we have the Ra that is heavy because of the Dhamma that comes before it, Mursaleen, 2, 4, or 6 at the end. And then you got Ala, the La is Haruf al-Mad, 2 harakans. The Sad is heavy, the Ra is heavy because it has a Fatah on it. And then you got Haruf al-Mad here because there's an Alif preceded by a Fatah. And then you've got the rule of Noon, Sakin, and Tanween, and it is Idgham bi Gunna, Idgham with Gunna, because it's a Yanmu letter. Mustaqim, the Qaf is heavy, and then it ends with 2, 4, or 6. And then you've got Tanzilal, This here is a noon sakin followed by a za. Za is not a throat letter, it's not a yanmu letter, it's not the letter ba. So it would fall into category number 4, and it is ikhfa. I pronounce it with gunna, and it's tanzilal azizir rahim. The ra is heavy, and then you've got 2, 4, or 6 at the end of the ayah. لِتُنذِرَ. So again, you've got a noon sakin followed by a dhal. This is ikhfa, and you would pronounce it with gunna. The ra is heavy. لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا. The qaf is heavy, and then you've got idgham bi gunna here. So idgham with gunna, and then you've got a stretch here. What mud is this? Okay, so this mud, if you can see, you have an alif preceded by a fatah. The next letter is a hamza. Remember we said that an alif with a fatah, kasra, or a damma on it basically is a hamza, and for that reason it would be mad munfasil, and I would choose whether I wanted to stretch this or not. But we said we would always do so until we have secured our tajweed in terms of its theory, and so this would be stretched as a 4 or 5. Unzira, you got a noon sakin followed by a dhal. This is ikhfa with the gunna. And then you've got the ra, which is heavy. A is haruf al-mad, 2 harakat. Ba, this is a harsher version telling you that it is mad muttasil. The reason for why is you have an alif with a fatah before it. The next letter is a hamza. Okay, and so for that reason, it would be pronounced as 4 or 5, and this is compulsory. I have to say it as aba'uhum. Okay, and then you've got a mim sakin rule followed by a fa. This is the rule of idhar shafawi. Okay, so the mim sakin ones are normally the ones that people always forget. This is idhar shafawi. And then you have the ghain, which is a heavy letter, and then there is a haruf where it's haruf al-mad, 2 harakas because of the alif daga alif. So ghafilun, and then you end it with 2, 4, or 6. Then you've got laqad, so you've got qaf, which is a heavy letter, and then you've got dal, which is a qalqala letter, and so I would bounce on it. Laqad, haqqal, qaf again is heavy, qaf again is heavy. So haqqal qawlu ala. So this la here, you see an alif daga alif, I don't know why I say alif daga, a daga alif, and then it's followed by a hamza. So this would be mad munfasil, and I would stretch it as 4 or 5. In technicality, it's voluntary, but we're going to stretch it anyway. Aktharihim, and then you have a mim sakin here, followed by a fa. This is idhar shafawi. Aktharihim. Fahum, again, you've got a mim here, mim sakin here, followed by a lam. This is idhar shafawi. No gunna. Fahum la. The la is haruf al-mad. And then you've got yu'minun, ending with 2, 4, or 6. Okay, next ayah is inna. You've got a noon mushadda here, and then you're stretching it because of the haruf al-mad as 2 harakat, and alif preceded by a fatah. Inna ja'alna, the same thing here, an alif preceded by a fatah. I would stretch it as 2 harakat. Fi, you've got here that little swirl to tell you that it is mad munfasil. Why? Because you have a ya with a kasra before it. The next letter is a hamza, and so it's voluntary for me to stretch it as 4 or 5. So it's fi a'naqihim. Qaf is heavy, and the noon here, there's a fatah and an alif, so I will stretch this as a 2. Then you've got a mim in a'naqihim, followed by a hamza. This is idhar shafawi. Aghla, the ghain is heavy. The la has a alif, daga alif on it, which is 2 harakas, and then la. This is a fatatain followed by a fa, which is ikhfa, pronouncing with gunna. Aghlala, fahiya ilal adqani. So the qaf is heavy, and then I would stretch the qaf because of the alif with the fatah before it. Adqani, fahum. You've got a mim sakin here followed by another mim. So this is idgham saghir. I would pronounce it with gunna. Fahum muqa. This is qalqala here. Muqa mahun. The qaf is also heavy. Muqa mahun. Okay, and then you're ending it with 2, 4, or 6. Okay, so that is, we're just going to stop up until there. So that is essentially all the tajweed rules that you need to know in order for you to be pronouncing and reciting your Quran perfectly and in accordance to how it should be recited. it's obviously you've done an intensive course here. You've literally covered the whole of the Tajweed rules in a space of a month. So well done for that. And then you're obviously not expected to be reciting it all perfectly at this point. You just know that you have the theory going forward and making sure that you're, you know, as in terms of you're able to see those rules and be able to pick up on it. And then slowly, you know, as in terms of as the sessions go on, I mean, not as the sessions go on, but as you continue with your own self learning, you're able to pick up on them and give yourself the personal task of finding a surah and looking for the rules. And then, inshallah, you know, we will see what happens. As in terms of if I'm able to do anything after Ramadan, then I will let you know, inshallah. Ideally, you know, as in terms of for anyone that's studying Tajweed, you need a teacher to be listening to you and making sure that you're reciting correctly, and that's how it should really be done. But naturally, because of the way that things have been set up and so forth, it hasn't been realistic. But I would advise you that, you know, you've gone onto this path, you know all the Tajweed rules now. Now, going forward, as in try and find a teacher, inshallah, that will be able to listen to you, and so that you can recite those letters and those rules and so forth. But yes, this is the last session. I won't be continuing on. And so we've covered everything anyway. So inshallah, you know, I hope the best for you guys, obviously, in terms of your Tajweed and this pattern and so forth.